Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Our Doctors versus the Internet Facebook live chat. And today we are going to have a conversation about managing adult relationships during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Prescott Stokes III, the Integrated Content and Marketing Manager here at the TCU and UNT HSC School of Medicine. And today I have Dr. Erin Nelson here.
Hi.
Dr. Nelson is a psychologist, and she is also the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Outreach at the School of Medicine. And I also have one of our other physicians, Dr. Ken Hopper.
Hi, good afternoon.
Dr. Hopper is a psychiatrist and also a physician development coach at the School of Medicine. Now, both will be answering any questions you have about managing adult relationships. All you need to do is jump into the comments section, leave your question, and we will get you some answers. But before we get to the questions, Dr. Nelson, I want to start with you. So there was a recent article in Forbes that stated that couples quarantining have been fighting more. So what can couples do to kind of limit some of that fighting?
No, I don't think anyone, Prescott, that has been at home with their family for this extended period is surprised by that finding that there's more conflict. Competing demands are putting tremendous strain on everybody, regardless of your role and family configuration. And something that's really been problematic for couples is that there's no clear line between work and home. An inability to stay focused on work, interruptions for each other that you may naturally do when somebody is sitting in the other room that you would have never interfered with their day or work life otherwise. One thing that has been helpful is to set up a bit of a red, green light sort of signaling system so that your partner can know if you're in the middle of something that is truly, a do not disturb situation or otherwise. And similarly, dividing work time and home time because it's all there always, making a clear definition when you're transitioning perhaps in the evening from being at work mode into home mode. That can be another way to help avoid some of that conflict.
And actually, that's pretty solid advice, Dr. Nelson. Me and my wife have been practicing that. Just the red light, green light kind of thing. There's actually a red light right now since we're having this live chat. But just back on that topic with conflicts, the same article also stated that money management and when to have sex were also two issues that couples were having challenges with right now. Is there any advice to kind of work through those?
Well, first of all, Prescott, those are the two things that human beings and couples fight about most regardless of quarantine. So that's not a newsflash. Those are the primary sources of couple conflict. It's important to have some empathy for yourself and your partner. People respond differently to tension and stress. And for one person, having sex may be a stress reliever. For someone else, they may have a significantly decreased libido right now and just not have the same level of interest. And so having a kind of frame of understanding that maybe it's not that your partner doesn't find you unattractive, maybe it is that they're just anxiety, tension, mood is interfering. And when it comes to money, people right now can get pretty polarized in terms of their idea about what to do. Some folks may be feeling like, people are losing their jobs, losing income, it's scary, you're okay, we need to save every penny for the future because it's so uncertain. And other folks may have the mind frame of, look, carpe diem, we only live once, the world's coming to an end, we need to go and enjoy our fun. And that too, those differences in couples are not uncommon, but they can become more problematic under external pressure that we have now. So communication about that and having a frame of reference can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's very, very, very good advice. I want to tell everybody that you can just jump in the comments section, leave a question about adult relationships. We have Dr. Nelson here, and we also have Dr. Hopper. So Dr. Hopper, I'm going to let you chime in right now. And I want to talk about couples and partners couples and partners with children actually trying to find a way to have alone time during this period. Is that something that they should really make a larger effort to make time for one another?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. You really have to be almost choreographed in how you do things. You're in the same space quite a bit of the time. And some couples already kind of know they have this with their kids, that they need to find time alone, and kind of a reason for the kids to have some activity, maybe even to be distracted with something with school or otherwise. But it's very important to do during this. Things that we normally do should continue because there's a reason for them. Having a time to be with your spouse, a time to be with the kids, a time to be with work, all of those are important. And adding to that, sleep and eating healthily. So the alone time is important. If you're going to keep the relationship going, you really have to have that.
And Dr. Hopper, let's also talk about one of the other things. So Dr. Nelson just commented on conflict, right? And arguments about different things. When you talk about having these arguments, what about not resorting to anger? I know it's a normal emotion for everyone, but is it important to try to find ways to keep that in check right now?
Absolutely. Anger is really a normal emotion. We can feel anger. It's what we do with it. In fact, one of the steps in having a person understand themselves is to know anger is normal. But we can sometimes spill ink that we can't wipe up very easily if we express it in the wrong way. Really hurt somebody, hurt the relationship. So there's some little tips that we use, just even working in the work arena, where you don't send an email when you're upset. You tend to need to use those in the relationship. If you're next to somebody or getting a little bit overwhelmed with what they're saying, good to perhaps maybe even practice this ahead of time, of getting away and decompressing, maybe exercising, then coming back to it on the topic, not the anger part. So very important to do.
And how about having these same arguments in front of children? How mindful should couples and partners be about trying to not have these kind of arguments and conversations in front of their children, Dr. Hopper?
Yeah, I think, there are some sayings that have been around for many, many years through human existence. And, our deeds speak louder than our words. And so we know that you can say a lot of things to a lot of people, but if we don't live it, if we don't walk the talk, as they say, it just isn't believed. You're not really teaching. You're teaching actually that you can have this say something and do something the opposite. So being able to model good arguing, because arguing does occur, is critical for child development. And so being able to stay on topic, not get mad, not throw things, etc., is really good parenting. Kids do need to know you can work through a conflict.
Good information. And so I just want to let everybody know, feel free to jump in this conversation. Any questions you have about managing adult relationships right now while we all are quarantining, put those questions in the comment section and I will definitely get you some answers. But what I want to say is, with all of the negative and the conflict, of course, there is an opposite side to that. So Dr. Nelson, there was another study that was cited that said 60% of the 1,200 couples that they talked to actually said their relationships have become stronger during the quarantine. So what's the dynamic happening right there with so many people feeling like their relationships have actually gotten better?
So thanks, Prescott. One of the things that is that the silver lining is that while people have more time at home, there is, in often cases, greater opportunity to, as Dr. Hopper was mentioning, work through and resolve conflict in a constructive and productive way. When maybe historically before the pandemic, people would leave things alone or let things linger and fester. There is more of an opportunity, whether it be forced, to actually engage with your partner and resolve some of those things that might be left as unfinished business otherwise. Another interesting thing about people and couples feeling stronger, I was speaking with a colleague actually who's also a psychologist, And she was noting that she's observed a significant generational difference in how couples have been responding to the pandemic, and that couples in their 60s or 70s that may have bickered or been had sort of more normal kind of frustrations with one another actually seem to be way more at peace in sorting out what is sort of a priority and what's worth being upset about, and that younger generations tend to be more stuck on their annoyances with one another than older couples. And so I found that really interesting and intriguing, and it makes perfect sense with time and wisdom.
Right. We also had some questions that came in, and you guys can take turns answering these questions because I think you both would probably be able to give some good advice. So the first question is, how can you handle one person wanting to stay in and away from all people, and the other person wanting to venture out and take risk and go have some fun?
So I'll take a first shot at this because I think there are several right answers here around this. It really reminds me of one of the cardinal, I think, recommendations that we as professionals would have for anybody going through stress, and that is you can become very overwhelmed with information and really standing back and using that energy to really focus on what you know and what science knows is critical. And if you do that, you are able to then focus on a plan that's based in some sort of reality. So I would say for both individuals, really that's a key thing, is to look and figure out, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? My energy and anxiety can be bound up and actually could get somewhere with planning what is the best step if I really look and say, what are experts telling me? And I think that really does go for both populations because there is a way to navigate through both of those.
And Prescott, I would just add to that. I think Dr. Hopper is exactly right, but I would add also that there are some other old-fashioned tools to use to communicate about a situation like that, because there's a big difference between saying you don't care about anything, you're going to be in reckless, versus I'm afraid, I don't want you to get sick. And so, people definitely have information overload and different ways of processing what they want to do. And this is going to be an increasingly significant issue as things reopen and some people want to go and engage it now if they have the opportunity, and others are making the choice. So really being able to express what it is that's concerning in the good old-fashioned I statement instead of you statement, and having a conversation about how big of a priority this is for each party could also help to mitigate some of that.
All right, and so we have a lot of questions that actually came in the last few minutes. So let me jump to the next question from Deborah. Thank you for your question, Deborah. And so Deborah's question is it as important for couples to have a schedule as it is for families? And I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, right, Dr. Nelson?
Yes, I think that one of the things that could be really helpful as you're wearing all of these different hats, as you are wearing a mom or dad hat and possibly a school teacher hat and an employee and a boss and a child, a son or daughter, all of those things at once, you can have focused time to say, right now I am setting around a schedule to be a couple, and this is the primary hat, the figure instead of the background right now, in addition to when we're spending family time and when there's other activities going on collectively versus, as Dr. Hopper was saying earlier, alone time. So that sort of schedule within a schedule, but not forgetting to include couple time in that calendar.
And we had another question that came in, and this question actually concerns dating. So either one of you can jump in and take this one as well.
Sure.
So I just want to say thank you for the question from the viewer. And the question is, I began dating a woman before COVID-19, but we're not seeing each other in person now. So how do we continue to develop our relationship? This seems like it could be very tricky when the relationship is new, right?
Right. I think this is a grand question, and I think the reason I smile is that I think there always are some silver linings to situations. And I put this in the category of several folks that I know that are professional friends and others that are not, saying, I've stopped running as quickly. I'm not just doing things all the time to where I can't really slow down and actually communicate and really get deeper into my relationships. So a lot of people are finding some real benefit of kind of this period to say, wow, they've been telling me to do this, and now I'm able to do it. So I see this in that same way. So if a person is long distance, we know that can work. It can work particularly if you're able to connect on something that is meaningful to each party, some cause, some part of who you are that is extremely beneficial to both. And, back in World War II, people would meet somebody and write love letters and get to know each other and would get married and stay married 70 years. So there can be some advantage of having to know somebody without just all the activity around. And so it can happen. It can happen very well.
Good information. Dr. Nelson, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think that Ken covered most of it. I would just say that for today's practical purposes, as the optimistic story that Dr. Hopper shared about the World War II couples, here you do have all of those, the benefits we have of technology to be able to have a Zoom call or a video chat, and there's lots of tools online. There are a simple Google search could find dating games that you can play with one another to get to know one another, and other sort of ways to engage creatively so that you can be connected and continue to learn about one another and grow.
So we also had a follow-up from Deborah to her original question about it being important for couples to have a schedule as it is for families. So her follow-up is, should couples do that via Zoom or something like FaceTime, or should couples put it on hold? And she also said, is it important to continue to trying to stay in contact with groups, like a book club or something like that via Zoom or FaceTime?
Yeah, I'll pick up and certainly reinforce it with what Dr. Nelson said. I think this is an expansion of that question, essentially. And yes, absolutely. We do have the advantage. You don't have to look at a pen and paper and try to remember what somebody looked like as they'd had to in World War II. We do have this ability to use Zoom and all kinds of technologies. And it's really amazing to hear how many people are becoming expert. I've had elderly family members who are now expert at Zoom. It's really very cool to see. So I think a lot of folks are examining, figuring out this is becoming their communication path, and everybody in our life can be contacted this way. Creating a little bit of a Zoom club activity, maybe having a dinner party. I've attended one of those recently with people around the country that I do some professional work with. So all kinds of things can happen, and they can be very joyous. So I think that's a great way to do it.
And Dr. Nelson, I kind of want you to jump in because I want to talk about roles in relationships. So prior to COVID-19 and quarantining, people in relationships have certain roles, right? And so now under quarantine, those roles might be different, or maybe you might need to help out more. How should couples approach that kind of situation, understanding what their roles and how they might be changing?
So if one person in a couple is primarily the one who does the cooking and someone else takes out the trash, or there's ways that you divide household activities. For lots of people, maintaining that sort of consistency feels good because this is something that has been continuous through the period of quarantine. Is something you can rely on that's predictable. However, inevitably with the work from home, and especially for couples with children being in the household and schooling and the togetherness, there is an inevitable increase in workload for every household. There just is. And being thoughtful and meaningful about how you divide tasks will be very important for couples. Recognizing that they need to consider first and foremost how they define equity, because it may not be you have a list of 10 things and I have a list of 10 things. They can really look at what are your strengths and what are your needs and what are my strengths and my needs, and how can we put that together to have, you know, the sort of optimal operating function for this household. But making sure that that people thoughtfully define equity in their relationship and pay attention to it, because with everyone feeling so overburdened, it is a very short rope to being resentful if you feel like you're carrying more weight than your partner. And so that's something that should be addressed early to head off sort of that unnecessary building of frustrations that can lead to anger and conflict in a couple.
And Dr. Nelson, just to kind of follow up on what you're saying, so is it a good idea for people in relationships to embrace doing things that both of them enjoy? Like, maybe you can't do the things that are outside, but inside, if your partner enjoys reading books, like maybe you all should pick a book and read it, discuss it, other different things, just to show them that like what you care about and matters just as much as what they care about.
Sure. I mean, if your partner loves football and you love the ballet and you don't like each other, you know, and you don't like the other, spending hours doing something that you really don't enjoy, it can be frustrating and be more in line with the sort of resentment that I was speaking of earlier. But when it comes to finding something that you enjoy together, absolutely. And this is a time for people to be creative. Is it working outside in the yard or the garden? Is it doing a shared household project, which can be something really rewarding for couples to do? Is it the crossword? I mean, again, it's a matter always of balancing and managing priorities. Nobody should have to engage in some activity that they just can't stand. But you also do need to, you know, be flexible. And one of the things that people really appreciate is just that expression of, I'm willing to do this to make you happy. That can go a long way also in finding a balance of shared joy, as Dr. Hopper mentioned.
And I just want to tell everybody, you can jump in the comment section if you have any questions about adult relationships. Dr. Nelson is a psychologist and Dr. Hopper is a psychiatrist, so we can give you some really, really good relationship information. So we do have a question that came in, and this one actually is just more on the medical side. So the question is, how has COVID-19 changed the way you both have seen patients? So I guess either one of you can take this question.
I'll start off for us. So, you know, we are a great team. We are working with Dr. Nelson and understanding that there are all kinds of perspectives in looking at individuals who are going through stress or a variety of things emotionally or cognitively. And so it's a very good kind of marriage in terms of those kind of levels of expertise. And this, you know, in the mental health field broadly, telemedicine and a video chat is a really great tool because we are not doing surgical procedures. We don't have to worry about that hands-on aspect of what we do. And for the most part, after a person has gotten a physical exam from a primary care doctor, for example. In fact, the only thing as a psychiatrist is, you know, we do monitor blood pressure, and we do in our practice have assessments that tell us how somebody is doing. They can do those asynchronously. Blood pressure, we have folks show their blood pressure cuff in the session. So we have a live accounting of that. And so really all the barriers are overcome with telemedicine. And I will tell you, we did about 40% in our practice, 40% telemedicine going into COVID. We used it quite a bit, and we were able to convert to 100% telemedicine really within that week. And so patients were seen. They certainly are going through all the kind of levels of stress that would happen in this pandemic. So I think it's been very useful to them, and they reflect that back to us. They've been very glad they've had that connection. So video chat works well. Zoom and a variety of other platforms are used for that.
And Dr. Nelson, is there anything you would want to add as far as seeing patients right now during the pandemic?
No, I mean, Dr. Harper's certainly right. For mental health professionals in general, there are, a variety of HIPAA compliant, platforms for psychologists and psychiatrists to use to engage their patients. And it is tremendously helpful, especially in this period of collective heightened anxiety and stress. The only thing that has been a complication at times for patients is when they don't have privacy to have their appointments. So there has to be some, sort of compromise or navigation in a household of how to ensure that the patient has the opportunity to speak privately with their mental health professional. And so, I've heard stories of very creative bathroom Zooms and so on in order to be able to have that piece. But otherwise, I really think the sky is the limit in terms of opportunity now, and I hope after the pandemic, for people to be have access to and recognize the importance of mental health care.
And I want to throw one question out here to both of you about couples who actually work in healthcare right now. So if there are couples out there who both may work in hospital settings, how can they manage their relationship right now? Because I'm sure there could be a lot of added pressures and stresses, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that is a tremendous challenge, especially for frontline workers, is when they have to make the very personal decision of whether to remain in the same household or living space with their partner. If one person is in the healthcare field and another is not, a lot of people who have the opportunity, and not everyone does, but people who have the opportunity have made the choice to move out of the household, which in some ways allows some decreased stress for that medical provider, in that they don't have the same fear that they're infecting their partner or children. But it also is another level of detachment from family and loved ones. And so that is an absolute another layer of stress. And if you have two in the same household, you multiply those concerns about the possibility of exposing one another, children, other family members, limitations in who you can see, in addition to what they're facing actually out engaged in active patient care. So a very, very high risk population for significant trauma and stress.
And I just want to give one question. I want both of you to actually answer this final question. Just how has COVID-19 affected you both personally as physicians?
Yeah, so I will take the first stab at this. And from my perspective, it has been a growth period. I think the one thing that I've learned getting older is growth is something we can do to the day we die. I watch my parents at their last years having a growth mindset about things. And so I hope I'm able to continue that. And so this has been a place for me to, when I was talking about standing back and not running as quickly, hey, that's me too. And so it has been a place for some great reflection and, re-upping relationships, kind of connecting with people I haven't connected with in a long time. So personally, it's been very fulfilling, particularly after the mad adrenaline rush of figuring out what to do. And I think it's one of those lemonade out of lemons situations for me.
Dr. Nelson, how about you?
I may be a bit less optimistic than my good friend, Dr. Hopper. For me personally, I've had, one of my very closest friends became COVID positive and was very, very gravely ill. Her husband also was, and several others, but she was very, very ill, and it was very frightening. And as the even though we're mental health professionals, we have the full range of emotion that everyone else does, fear and confusion and trying to interpret data and make sense. We both are trained in science, so how do we make sense of facts? Mostly, I would say that it's been humbling, transitioning an entire medical school curriculum um, with an incredible team here to an online modality for delivery. And then certainly in the admissions role, watching the team, my amazing team in the Office of Admissions and Enrollment Services, able to proceed with onboarding the next class of medical students that will be history making and that they will start remotely. So humbling, full range of emotions, and tremendous gratitude for my colleagues at the School of Medicine. But I won't say that I've had all good days about it, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you both for giving us that insight. And I just want to let everyone know that will do it for today's live chat. So thank you again, Dr. Nelson, and thank you, Dr. Hopper.
You. Bye-bye. Take care.